Really?
Good evening. Okay, so let's get going, given the fact that I don't know how long I will last today. Uh, and therefore, I don't want to waste your time, my time, and then in the end say, sorry, I can't sit in. Yeah, so we were talking about empiricism yesterday, and I was trying to tell you that empiricism uh, escaped the problems of positivism because of the fact that uh, empiricism did not make any of these uh, dichotomies between science and philosophy, uh, between sorry, uh, between values and facts. In fact, I told you that it derived the whole idea of what constitutes knowledge from this whole thing of metrics, which is not unlike the Greeks. Uh, the Greeks, there were different kinds of schools. There were some people who believed that philosophy was a sufficient enough proof of what uh, you were discussing or what you were offering. But you'll also see that there were other people who were doing it with numbers, with lines, and demonstrating the proof of things. Um, the best combination of both these things would be Pythagoras. And at one level, he was basically trying to establish the truth through the deductive method of reasoning, which was there in the uh, case of the right angle triangle, where he was saying that in a right angle triangle, uh, the square on the hypotenuse was equal to the sum of the squares on the other two sides. So this here is deductive reasoning, but you will find that I can't go into that right now because that is another minefield, and we'll spend quite some time there if we go there. But there were other places where Pythagoras actually talks about how to empirically prove things. So he's not a pure uh, philosopher in the sense of relying only upon philosophy. Neither is he a pure numbers or mathematics kind of person, relying upon mathematics. But I'm bringing this point to your forefront only for one simple reason, uh, and that is that if you look at the ancient Greeks, the ancient Greeks did have a funny admixture of both these ways of looking at the world. Uh, but like I told you, with the growth of philosophy and of course the influence, the seminal influence of Plato, you would find that there is uh, a growth in the uh, philosophical method that rejected any kind of empirical data. But his own student Aristotle actually rejected Plato. I should have talked about this a bit yesterday, but well, I'll just talk about it very quickly now. Now, if you look at Aristotle, Aristotle is not somebody who relies upon mathematics. If you remember your schooling days, you will remember um, Aristotle showing up everywhere, okay, in English, in uh, poetry, in prose, in drama, and he would show up in biology, including botany and zoology. So he would, in physics, and a little bit of chemistry as well. So he appears everywhere. But one place that he doesn't appear is mathematics. Go through any number of books that you want. Try to see uh, where Aristotle made a certain kind of a contribution to mathematics, and you'll find that there is no place where Aristotle made a contribution to mathematics, okay, which is worth talking about, which is worth talking about later. I mean, Plato's, there are a lot of contributions of Plato's to mathematics. Uh, there are Pythagoras' contributions, but you can't find Aristotle's. The difference between Plato and Aristotle is Plato tended to look at the world as some kind of a mechanism that could be understood deductively by internalizing the world itself. In fact, he doesn't say you internalize the world. When he says that you're born with knowledge, innate knowledge, it's saying that the world is already internalized. Now, this is something that Aristotle does not agree with. What Aristotle basically tries to say is he is trying to look at a number of things that are around you, a number of things that are around you. And from all that, he's trying to understand which is the best possible. That is what you need to understand. The best possible from what you have at hand. Because if you look at Plato, Plato is looking not at the best possible. He is looking at the best, uncompromising best. Okay, so the politeia of Plato is an uncompromised best in terms of organization of people and their lives. But Aristotle is not saying that. Aristotle also has politeia in it, in his writings. And for him, politeia is the best of what you can manage. So you must have, at some stage in your life, heard of how Aristotle studied 159 constitutions and from that drafted the constitution of Athens, and therefore Aristotle is the first constitutionalist in the world. This is something that you need to forget, okay? Because first and foremost, in Aristotelian times, there were no constitutions. 159 or 1, there were no constitutions. Written down constitutions, not at all. So what is this? What did Aristotle study then? What Aristotle studied was simply the codification of some of the things into laws in some of the Greek police. Okay, so he saw that some people had, orally only, they had given a certain kind of value to certain things and lesser value to other kind of things and no value to anyone, to some of the things. So what you're looking at here is codification. Codification basically meant how you had to be a good citizen. Citizen, please, I can't go on saying the C way, but what people are talking about at that particular time, even in ancient Greece, is the C way or the civic person. And the civic person carries the responsibility of ensuring good life in a police. Okay, in a police, actually. Sorry. So that is what Aristotle studied. And ultimately, the conclusion he came to was not X is better than Y. Y is not as good as Z. Z is the worst. Not those kind of conclusions. He tried to see what were the aspects of life that could be codified and what aspects of life could not be codified. So, in a way, if you look at Aristotle, he's probably the world's first empiricist. A fact borne out by, if you read his book, Prior and Posterior Analytics. If you read this particular book, you will see the empirical bias. You can't call him a full-blown empiricist. No Greek is a full-blown anything. Okay? Every Greek is a seed, which later led to the blossoming of plants and flowers. So if you basically look at Aristotle, Aristotle is this really first philosopher who lends himself to be called a primitive empiricist, because Aristotle did not believe in the innateness of knowledge. Aristotle believed in observation. Aristotle believed in the following of something that you are observing. And after that, you draw a certain kind of conclusion from the object that you have followed. Now, Aristotle is not talking about proof. Okay? He's not talking about proof. He's not saying that this is the best. He's saying that the best possible. That changes everything. Now, so Aristotle can be taken as perhaps the first person to have hinted at empiricism as a proper fountainhead of knowledge. Now, if you come back to what we were doing yesterday, where I was trying to tell you that the reason why empiricism succeeded where positivism failed is because empiricism applied itself only to numbers, not to values, not to facts, nothing, just to numbers. Okay? So if you want to know whether a school is very big or very small, what do? You take a head count of the students. And if they are lesser than a certain amount, you'll say this is a small school. And if the head count exceeds a certain number, then you'll say that this is a large school. So you see, that is what they're coming to. They're not giving you a judgment here that a small school is better than a large school. They're not giving you that judgment. Maybe the judgment can be drawn later on by whoever is using that particular data to say maybe smaller schools would mean that we can give greater attention to students. Or you could also say maybe large schools are better because we can collect more fees, and by collecting a greater amount of fees, we can reduce the cost of education, get more teachers, probably good teachers. So that is not the empiricist's job. This is the job of somebody who's looking at data. Today, everybody is talking about data, big data, data mining, machine learning. All this is nothing but this. There you have got truckloads of data or shiploads of data, and you have to make sense of it. But the data itself doesn't tell you how to make sense of it, what will make it positive and what will make it negative. That is not done by data. Data, in that sense, is inert. It's inert. It has no brains. It doesn't move on its own. It doesn't tell you that this is good, this is bad. That is left to us. What data does is it gives you what happens in what scenario. What happens in what scenario? So the best example that you can think of is the transformation that the a rubric of political science, which is public policy, the rubric that is going through this transformation. Okay, early on, it was more towards the idea of, looking after people, at least in Europe. In America, it had nothing to do with looking after people. In America, you look after yourself. Nobody looks after you, not even your own children. So there it was all about management. And basically, it was called public administration there because of the fact that people who were employed in various factories, and that was the early part of the 20th century, was when Henry Ford
¿Y dónde noté yo la clase de ayer?
sorry?
Sorry. Es que es mi profesora y by mistake I had to open.
Okay. All right. So if you are looking at the whole idea that Henry Ford brought to the world, a really revolutionary idea, that is the assembly line. Now, the assembly line was divided into line workers and staff workers. Okay, so now the line workers, especially, were not taken as employees of these big companies. The reason is very simple. If you take all these people on board as your employees, then a situation might arise where at some point you have too many of these people and too little work. And if you call them employees of the corporation or the company, then that itself creates some headaches because there are some rules and regulations about what do you do with surplus staff or surplus line staff. So to avoid that, people like F.W. Taylor, okay, Taylorism as it is called, created the scientific management theory. And this scientific management theory basically simply meant two things. First and foremost, optimize the movement of the worker on the floor, which is don't let the worker do something that he can do in 8 steps. Don't allow him to do it in 14 steps. If you've seen Modern Times by Charles Chaplin, most amazing film, one of the most amazing films. It's a critique of this. It's precisely the critique of this. Okay, so now after he had arrived at an idea that brevity of movements and economy of time leads to maximum production with minimum effort. That is the scientific management theory. So and this was being played out, people realized that they couldn't let all the people who stood outside the factory gates to come inside and ask for work. So they would decide beforehand. They would decide that we don't need more than 120 men today. So they'll take only 120 men. They don't write their names. They don't write anything, no documentation. When the day is over, the chap is paid and he's gone home. Okay? So this is how the idea of a public came into being. The public was not you and I. The public was the worker who was standing at the gates asking for employment. Okay? Now, what people wanted to know is, how do you administer these people? Because you don't want their names, you don't want anything personal of them. Funnily, that is exactly the opposite of where we are today. Today, we want the name, father's name, father's grandfather's name, and father's grandfather's grandmother name. We want all these things. Okay? So, there they didn't want, because go, I don't want you to be an unnecessary millstone around my neck. So if you finished your job, take your money and go. It's that. So that's how it was public administration. And you will see again in Elton Mayo. In Elton Mayo, in the Hawthorne experiments that he conducted, he looked at the reason why telephone operators, in those days, there were not automatic telephone exchanges. So if you picked up your phone, you would go to an operator and you had to give the operator the number that you want to speak with. And you get that number, you speak. But people expected the telephone operators to be cheerful, to be full of verve. Okay? So the moment you picked up the phone, up goes the phone on the other end. There'll be this lady who'll say, "Good morning, what can I do for you today?" You know, in a very upbeat sort of a manner. This is something Americans believe even today. You go to a Greyhound bus station, you go to what is that? No, not Trans Am. Anyway, the railway station. Everybody is looking at you cheerfully. Everybody says, "Hello, how are you? How's your day today?" Okay, so the idea is we should all be cheerful all the time. Nobody should be crestfallen. Nobody should look like they've lost something. But what was happening with the telephone operators were that their levels of enthusiasm began falling. The levels of enthusiasm began falling as a result of the falling of the levels of enthusiasm. The operators, did not speak in a sprightly manner. The thing was not rise and shine, the sun is up in the sky. That is the kind of atmosphere they were supposed to create. But contrary to that, they were creating a dull, drab way of working. They'd say, what can I do for you? Which number, please? So, what Elton Mayo did is he wanted to see why is it that the telephone operators, with the passage of time, why is it that these people were losing their verve, their enthusiasm? Why is it that they were beginning to be, slow? Why is it that they were beginning to show their, what do we say, their unhappiness? So, Elton Mayo conducted these Hawthorne experiments. Hawthorne's the place. And what he found is that the telephone operators found their job to be boring because every morning they would come, they'd do the same thing throughout the day and go home in the evening. So where is the excitement? Where is the excitement that produces the enthusiasm? Where is the excitement that produces, a bright, cheerful voice? So you will find Elton Mayo basically saying that, okay, we need to do something about their attitude. And how do we do something about their attitude? You have to incentivize their performance. You basically have to incentivize their performance. So they have something to look forward to. Maybe a gift, maybe a raise in the salary, whatever it is. You're going to get an incentive that you can show and tell everyone, look, I got this. They all really love showing, even if we got one small little spoon or something. Okay, we love showing, I got the spoon. Somebody says, what for? You might not even, but you're happy you've got the spoon. So Mayo therefore said, give them incentives. Incentives were given to the experimental group, and it worked. So then it went all across the board. So you see, the reason why I'm spending so much time here, public administration, talking about Elton Mayo's human relations theory and Frederick Taylor's scientific management theory, is because I am trying to demonstrate to you as to how the approaches that they took initially, were devoid of moral judgments. They were completely devoid of moral judgments. Taylor only said a worker on The line has to do a certain cycle of work with a maximum of 7 or 8 movements in a maximum of, maximum of 1 or 2 minutes. There's no judgment here. Okay? There is only a concern that how do you increase productivity that will increase profitability. So this is some kind of empiricism. Okay, there are no conclusions drawn. I'm exploiting. Am I doing something? No. I'm maximizing profit. Why do I do business? Do I do business to give money to others? For that, do I need to do business? I might as well sit and distribute everything and then join the others in asking somebody else. I've distributed. Now that you're distributing, please give me some. Okay? So there is no value judgment here. There is only a focus on improving productivity for the sake of increasing profitability. You're not increasing productivity just because you like things going fast. Okay? You're not sitting in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and driving very fast and saying, oh, I like the sensation. That's not how it works, right? Somebody's working there, poor fellow. So you're not thrilled to bits that he's doing his work at a certain pace. But you're not even saying, oh, poor fellow is having to work at this pace throughout the day. So you just want him to work fast so that you can have more profits. So if you look at this, there is a complete lack of anything called values and everything. If there is value, it is a mathematical value. I need more money. That's it. And you don't have to justify your statement that I need more money. I need more money, I need more money. Okay, now similarly with the workers, telephone workers. Yeah, after some time they found that what they were doing was completely boring. There was nothing to feel good about. So the performance started tapering off. And if the performance tapers off, then the telephone companies' earnings also begin to taper off. Most people wouldn't want to use your company if you have somebody who picks up the phone and says, yeah, tell me who I'm supposed to call. You don't want somebody to say that to you. So you will basically try to increase the niceties. And by increasing the niceties, you are possibly increasing the revenues of the company. This is another bit of empiricism. That you have a goal, a clear goal, which is increase of revenues. But what do I do to increase the revenues? Because I can clearly see the revenues are falling due to lack of enthusiasm. So how do I generate more enthusiasm? So I'll say incentivize performance. The more you incentivize performance, the better they perform. That's what Eldon Mayer said. In America, people at one time said perform or perish. Now people are saying perform and perish. You don't have a choice anymore. If you perform, you are so exhausted, so tired, so dead that you have perished. If you don't do the work, then who's going to pay you money? So you perished. This is the rotten core of capitalism. And I'm not a Marxist. So, what I'm trying to tell you, therefore, is empiricism plays around with numbers. Okay, somebody is running a junior college, wants to basically, improve the number of people coming to his junior college. So what do these people do? Typically, they go to scale down McKinsey's and scale down Boston consulting groups. They go to all these scale down people and say, tell me, why am I not getting the numbers that I require? Tell me, what should I do to get in more people into my college? So you probably will start investigating how many students do you have? How many teachers do you have? Out of these total number of students, how many of them are doing maths? How many of them are doing biology? How many of them are doing something else? So if you have all these in front of you, then you start looking at the figures. You say, how much do you pay your maths teacher? You probably would say, I pay the maths teacher some 55,000 or 60,000. And then you're looking at the profile of the students who join maths in that particular college. Now, the profiles could be that they come from good colleges, where you assume they must have had good teaching of mathematics. And maybe they're not getting the same level of teaching from the teacher in the college. Or maybe the teacher is too dull, drab, doesn't make any jokes, or makes poor jokes and laughs at those jokes himself or herself. So you'll study that. And then you will look at the other subjects as well. You'll see which subject is doing the best. You'll find commerce is doing the best. You'll see that after mathematics, it is the commerce students who are the next biggest lot. And they are being served by a teacher who's young and pretty, and who is gregarious, willing to listen to what the students have to say and say something back in return. So you see, the students in that class are happy. They are happy, those students. Students in the class of this old tired maths teacher are not very happy, because you have to be happy and you have to convey that happiness. You know what Immanuel Kant said about Rousseau? He said, I have picked up Rousseau and I read him and I didn't find anything wrong with Rousseau. Everything that he said was right. And then I sat and thought to myself, how can somebody be perfect? How can Rousseau not have said something which is not perfect? It could be imperfect. It could be wrong. So he sat and read Rousseau a second time. And that is when he found a few things to contend with. Some people have such a happy style of writing. They have such a happy style of speaking that you feel absolutely fine. You feel great. You enjoy, the thing about joy is that it can be transmitted, right? And we also know that sadness can also be transmitted, right? So I think in Kagas Ke Phool or something, Gurudat says that if you are enjoying, then go ahead and transmit that enjoyment. It will become double. If you're feeling sad, go and distribute or share that sorrow or sadness with your own friends, and sorrowness becomes half. So when you share enjoyment, it doubles. When you share sorrow, it halves. It's a great thing. Actually, I think it's Sadhu Zahir Ludhianvi who said that, who wrote that, I'm sorry. And similarly, it's like that. You see some people, if you go to a party, you see some people at the center of attraction. Okay? Everybody gravitates towards them. Everybody is trying to talk to them. Why does that happen? That happens because that person is spreading his joy. Okay? He's spreading his joy to other people. Right? So Mayo is doing the same thing. He's saying, let these people become spreaders of joy, not spreaders of sadness. So you will therefore find that in this, the result in itself does not tell you anything. It's just a result. Out of the 10 telephone operators, 7 are mildly depressed, the other 3 are not depressed, but they're not very happy either. It's just a figure. At the end of that, you draw a conclusion. In a company of the size of 10 operators, almost all 10 of them are not spreading joy. Okay, so in that sense, if you look at empiricism does not draw judgments from what it studies. It'll only say, look, we've studied this, and this is what it is. It is up to the researcher to start drawing conclusions from the material that is in front of him or her. That is empiricism. It'll only give you data. I mean, let's look at it. You at random, you get some data from a factory, and this runs into 40, 50 sheets. You don't look at it and say, wow, this is great, ha, ha, ha. Or you don't sit and say, oh my God. You don't even know what that is. So the data is neutral. Data is not emotional. The imbuing of emotion to the data is the task of the researcher. That is the task of the researcher. But you need to collect data. You should know what you're collecting it for. If I say, please go and collect data. So what data? How are we supposed to collect it? That is where empiricism will tell you what your larger goal is. Value neutrally what your larger goal is. It will tell you how much data it wants. It will tell you how it will interpret that data. And it will tell you what kind of conclusions could possibly come out of it. And if you've finished your data analysis, of course, you get conclusions out of it. Okay. So thank you very much. I'll see you on Monday. You need 2 days off, otherwise you'll crack up. Right? So today is Friday, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
As is the case, let's keep Sunday and Saturday and Sunday. You take your break from me. I'm waiting to see how these 3 members, who's going to fall out next. Then we'll have to. After that, then we'll have to see who is the person who's going to fall out. Then we'll have 1. For me, 1 is a crowd, so I'll take a class. And after that domino also falls out, then I shall look at my pretty face, enjoy my lecture, and put it on on YouTube, because there are people who are funnily, very funnily, watching my lectures on YouTube. I never thought that was going to be possible. I thought there'll be some kind of a, इसको YouTube से भगाओ movement or something like that. Anyway, so thank you very much. And see you on Monday. So good night. Happy weekend. And all that kind of thing. Right then. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.